I want to tell you about the time that I almost died underwater. So between the years of 2007 to 2018, I worked as a commercial diver. So for those of you that don't know what commercial diving is, a lot of you might think about scuba diving, but scuba diving and commercial diving are two completely different worlds. In scuba diving, you wear a tank on your back that you breathe from, so you have a limited amount of air, and which means a limited amount of bottom time. You have a regulator in your mouth, a mask, fins, you're swimming around. Commercial diving, typically we wear a fully enclosed helmet, fiberglass, brass, stainless steel, something like that. And we breathe off of an air compressor on the surface. We have a hose that's attached to us at all times, and that it's actually what we call an umbilical. It's at least 4 parts. You've got your main air line for your breathing air, you've got a secondary air line, you have a communications wire and a rope, and it's all weaved together. So you're always tethered to the surface. You always have communication. Most of the time you put on a bunch of weight and you sink down to the bottom and you work on stuff. We did a lot of work all around the Great Lakes and all over the Midwest at power plants and steel mills. And we worked every day of the year, no matter what the weather was, no matter how cold it was, how hot it was, no matter how hot the water was or how cold the water was. Most of the time you can't see your hand in front of your face. It's just pitch dark all the time. So all that being said, we did have one job that our company did. I worked for the same company the whole 10 and a half years. We did one job every year that was on scuba equipment. So picture this. Out in the cornfields in Illinois, there's got a big lake, and at the bottom of this lake is a large and long concrete structure, like a giant speed bump that's about 40 or 50 feet wide and really long. I want to say 2/3 of a mile long, 3/4 of a mile long. And this is at the bottom of the lake. The idea of this structure is that if the dam on the far end of the lake broke, this structure would catch enough water that the power plant on the shore would have enough water to shut down safely and do what they needed to do. I had done this job quite a few times prior to this particular time. We did it in different ways, whether it was one diver underwater, 2 divers in the water. But this particular time, I was diving with my buddy Brian. We would swim side by side along this concrete structure, and it was so wide that we would swim one way on one half of it, and then we'd have to swim back on the other half of it. It took pretty much an entire day to do this swim. It was really long. Burn up a lot of scuba tanks doing this. Water is murky, muddy, pitch black, no visibility whatsoever. If you wanted to see the compass on your wrist or your computer on your wrist, you had to hold it straight up to your mask to even have hopes of seeing it. But really it was not a hard job outside of just the monotony of swimming in the dark for that long. This particular dive, Brian and I are swimming along. Oh, and let me add this. We have no communication to each other. We are tethered to each other with a rope. So we've got, a 20-foot, 30-foot rope tied between us to kind of keep us on track as we swim side by side. And we're just feeling for cracks and breaks and erosion on this structure. Nothing serious. So this particular time we're swimming along and our tether rope between us gets caught on something. Swim along, you get kind of hung up and can't move. Okay. So I follow the rope back. I start coiling up the rope in my hands as I follow back to find where we're tangled up, and so we can free it and keep going. As I get close to the spot where the rope is snagged, which turns out to be like a log stick, something down there that it got snagged on, I get hit in the face by what I assume was Brian's foot or something. Knocks the regulator out of my mouth. I can't see him. I don't see him coming when he hits me. I can't even see his light that he's holding or anything. There's no visibility whatsoever. So when you learn how to scuba dive initially, like losing your regulator out of your mouth is not a big deal. They teach you this move where you sweep your arm back, you catch the hose in your arm, you grab your regulator, stick it right back in your mouth and keep on breathing, no problem. And if you can't do that, you grab your secondary regulator called your octopus and you breathe off of that. not a big deal. But in this particular situation, the rope, as I was gathering it up, collecting all the slack of the rope, my hands, I managed to literally tie my hands together and I can't get them apart. So here I am, we're about 30 feet underwater, with my hands stuck, can't move my hands more than this. My regulator's out of my mouth, and my buddy Brian has no idea that I'm in any kind of trouble. He can't see me, we can't talk, he didn't even know that he hit me. So I'm down there and I'm struggling, running out of air very quickly. Like, I had no warning that I was gonna lose my regulator. It'd be one thing if I could have taken a deep breath and then held it, but I didn't get that luxury. So I'm sitting there and I'm wiggling my hands and I'm trying to get my hands free of this rope so that I can retrieve my regulator, and I'm looking up, straight up to the surface, which you can't really see the surface. There's just like a faint greenish, brownish glow from the sunlight. And I remember thinking down there, just really? Like this is how I'm gonna die? At the bottom of this muddy lake in the middle of nowhere in Illinois? Like, this is it? Really? So I start seeing stars in my vision and my head is starting to feel like it's gonna explode, wanting air, and I know that I'm about to involuntary inhale, which would, not be a good thing. And I also knew that it was gonna be probably a matter of 3 to 5 minutes before Brian even knew I was in trouble. He would have felt the rope free and he would have gotten back on track and kept swimming, and it would have taken him a minute to sort of feel resistance coming from me, and he would probably wonder why I wasn't swimming, and then he would have to come back and find me, and it just would have taken him a long time to realize that, he doesn't have a reg in his mouth, he's not moving. Then he has to bring me to the surface slowly and safely, and so I knew if I had passed out in that moment, it was over. Somehow, right before I blacked out, I managed to get my hand out and managed to get my regulator and pop it back in my mouth. And that feeling of elation when you're suffocating and then you get that breath of air. There's no feeling quite like that. So I sat there for I don't know, 10, 20 seconds and just kind of collected my breath, tried to regain my composure. I never really panicked. I never felt panicked. I just kind of felt resigned and a little frustrated that, this was going to be the pathetic way that I die. Once I kind of gathered myself and brought it all back together in my mind, I just kept swimming and didn't even surface or let my buddy Brian know until the next day. But needless to say, the next time we did that job, we wore fully enclosed scuba masks with push-button comms, so that was never going to happen again. So thankfully I'm still here. Thankfully I didn't drown at the bottom of a lake. And that's how I almost died underwater.